Those in power have an end game. It's purely dystopic. And right now, there's a huge opportunity for change. Real change. Real alternatives. And the voices in this room have so much potential to be heard right now. It's time to seize the momentum, start building the utopia we wish to see. Because in the words of Jacques Fresco, if you think we can't change the world, it just means you're one of the ones that won't. Thank you.
Okay, we got it that time. Hi, I'm Randy Critical live on the fly here on 99.5 FM in New York City, WBAI, and on Progressive Radio Network with a very special edition. If I can get my head in this StreamYard, streamline the StreamYard look. Edition of Assange Countdown to Freedom. We're going to be talking about that and some other issues like Gaza and Leonard Peltier and whatever. It's going to be a riff day, folks. I just want to make one announcement here. On February 27th, we're returning with stand-ups for Assange in D.C. At the Tabard Inn on the 27th of February. And then on the 28th, there'll be a demonstration in front of the DOJ. All right. That being said, my guest today, my special guest, and I have not seen her since maybe we'll talk about that, since she got the exclusive interview with me on the whole Roger Stone saga back in 2018, and it was a tell-all, and it's the best interview that I did, and I avoided everybody else. So that's out there on YouTube, Empire Files. And it's Abby Martin. Abby Martin is an investigative journalist, award-winning investigative journalist, and she's the creator and co-producer with Michael Preisner of the Empire Files, and also many other accomplishments, including the film Gaza Fights for Freedom and the upcoming film, which is really chilling, and it's called The Earth's Greatest Enemy. And joining me as my co-host for the 5th straight week, God is my co-pilot, Roger Waters. Roger Waters is, just the greatest musician, songwriter around today. I love him. He's just wonderful. He's the most prolific and profound and eclectic music maker and a great activist. Not since Paul Robeson have we seen someone who's in the entertainment business, Harry Belafonte, Dick Gregory, and Pete Seeger. It's that blend that is Roger Waters. Okay, that being said, I was watching you, Roger, before we go to this, Leonard Peltier. I saw your tweet last night. He has COVID. I used to take Bill Kunstler to the airport when he was doing his appeal back in '92 every other week. And so 46 years he's been in prison. And there's a petition out there. It's on change.org to try to get this reactionary president to give him a pardon or clemency. With that being said, we're going to play a little bit of music and come back and speak with Abby Martin and Roger Waters. Wow, 46 years he's been in prison. 46 years, 1976, right about the time that Gerald Ford and the Kissinger and company started that, not conflict, but the Operation Condor in Argentina, leading to the deaths of over 30,000 Argentines. All right, Abby, first of all, thank you for joining us. It's been a long time since I last saw you. I know you've been I don't know if you've been out there or you've taken a little break, but a lot of people are saying, welcome back, Abby. So welcome back, Abby. And you, Roger, always good to see you. And I'm going to begin with this clip. I want to play a clip, Abby, from Gaza Fights for Freedom that is on. You can get it. You can get that at where Vimeo, and I urge everybody Vimeo to watch it. And the reason why I bring this up is because Amnesty International has come out and actually called it Israel an apartheid state. All right, so let's play that little clip here, and we'll come back and we'll talk about it.
A diplomatic cable released by WikiLeaks reveals the truth behind Israel's rhetoric about Hamas. After losing the election, rival party Fatah requested that Israel come to their aid with weapons and military strikes to prevent Hamas from taking control of the Strip. As exposed in the cables, the Israeli intelligence chief told the US ambassador that they wanted Hamas to take full control of Gaza, telling him that if Hamas managed to take full control, then the Israeli Defense Forces would be able to regard Gaza as a hostile territory. Fatah fled as a result, and Israel immediately designated every man, woman, and child in Gaza hostile, and therefore everything a legitimate target.
That is a gut-wrenching documentary. And so we have two things going. The WikiLeaks providing that particular cable. Can you talk about that film a little bit? And, I know dealing with Israel is almost the third rail of life. Did you get a lot of pressure, a lot of pushback?
Well, the Israeli government's hated me for some time, ever since I was talking about their egregious war crimes every single day back during their 2014 onslaught in Gaza. I actually had a big debate with an Israeli spokesperson. They invited me to come to Israel, see what it was really like. So I took them up on their offer. I went, saw it with my own eyes, the bigotry and racism that Israeli society basically displays to perpetuate this apartheid state. I spent a month in the West Bank, spoke to hundreds of Palestinians, and basically documented how this narrative is completely flipped on its head. Unfortunately, I was banned for life from entering Gaza, so I can't, ever go there and actually see my brothers and sisters who live in Gaza. So I was able to work around the blockade to produce this documentary, Gaza Fights for Freedom, which you can actually watch for free on YouTube and Films for Action. It's heavily censored on YouTube, but you have to go around some restrictions to get there. But so I was banned for life. So I was able to work with Gaza journalists to document the horrors and atrocities that Israel committed during the Great March of Return. And that cable is just one of tens of thousands of cables that have been absolutely crucial, that have been released by WikiLeaks, that make us understand the reality that we live in today.
Right. It's like I said, it's a gut-wrenching and a must-see documentary. Roger, have you seen a documentary? And you have been involved in support of the Palestinians.
Yeah, of course I've seen it. Yeah, I went when Mike and Abby were doing their whistle-stop tour around the United States, doing screenings of the movie. I went to the one in New York and attended the Q&A. It's great. It's a great documentary. I thoroughly recommend it to anybody who hasn't seen it. And as we've seen, that since their documentary came out, which was what, a year and a half, maybe longer ago. How long?
2019, yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, a lot has been happening. I mean, the Amnesty International news from yesterday or the day before or whenever it was is quite remarkable. I mean, how it took Amnesty International this long to get off the effing fence and actually say something about the apartheid state of Israel. Anyway, never mind. I'm not gonna go into a harangue against Amnesty International, because they finally have. And actually, if you follow up and go down the rabbit hole, even 2 or 3 feet, there's a long piece and with a spokesperson. I don't know what his name is, but he was extremely eloquent, explaining the whole thing and why it really is apartheid, because it is not open to new. In my tweet yesterday, I said this is not open to redefinition by the Hasbara, by the Israeli lobby, by the Ministry for Strategic Affairs. You cannot change the meaning of the word apartheid. It is set in stone. I only mention that en passant because they've tried to do it with the words anti and Semite and Semitism. They've tried to change the meaning of what anti-Semitism is using something called the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, I believe. Anyway, let's not go there because it's long and boring. But that was hugely important of Amnesty International yesterday. And it's no little thanks to the films of people like Abby and also our friend Max, let's not forget, who made the movie after the 2014 war and wrote 51 Days and all of that. And you, Randy, and everybody who's been trying to point to this. What's interesting, I will stop in a minute, but what's interesting about what Abby is saying is that Julian, who we're here to talk about obviously as well, provided those cables and whatever. But what is really interesting as well, tying that into the Leonard Peltier story, is even though we know all this stuff, why is it that it's so hard, to get people to look at it, be interested in it, believe it, take any notice of it, on one hand, and with specific reference to our brother Leonard Peltier in prison for 46 years, why can't the man ever admit he was wrong, flat wrong? Everybody knows that Leonard Peltier is an innocent man who's been banged up for 46 years for no reason except that it was convenient to the man. It's exactly like Julian's predicament now. Julian has committed no crime. They want him dead, and they won't rest until he's dead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well,
there's no rules today. We are, Abby and I spoke yesterday.
I know, but I'm a co-host. I'd like to. I mean, is Joe Biden going to come riding out of the White House on a fucking white horse and go, "This man's committed no crime, set him free"? No, he fucking isn't, because he's
I mean, Assange.
He's whatever he is, but he's not capable of that. And he's hardly capable, I would think, of getting out of bed in the morning. Never mind anything else. It's a fucking miracle he can hold a teacup, Sorry.
I mean, I really, it's unbelievable. I mean, clearly Assange is a political prisoner today, the same way that Leonard Peltier has been a political prisoner for 47 years. And it's all a punitive lashing out because of the empire's embarrassment from both of these men. Leonard Peltier's story, I mean, showing that the American Indian movement was a necessary force. I mean, the United States had broken all the treaties. It's basically pushed all the native people in this country out to the outskirts, corralling them into these camps, depriving them of basic services. I mean, the fact that we had this militant movement and it had to be crushed, it had to be punished. Assange has just put such a stake in the heart of the lies, exposed so many layers of the manipulation that goes into our foreign policy that he had to be taken out. But I want to say that there was this huge campaign that was pressuring Trump, and a lot of people who put themselves out there basically staking their life that Trump was going to pardon Assange. I never bought it. Trump was calling for his execution essentially and also oversaw his arrest. And he was just asked point blank, why didn't you pardon Assange? And he was just like, I didn't want to. But I think that instead of putting all of our faith in, Trump's reelection or potentially someone like a Trump, we can look at whoever's in power right now and galvanize a movement to try to call to free Assange. Obama wasn't a saint, right? He only was pressured to commute Chelsea Manning's sentence after overseeing her torture campaign in solitary confinement because of the pressure campaign that was linked and chained with the anti-imperialist left, that every single anti-war march, every single LGBTQ action had a contingent calling to free Chelsea Manning. And until that day, was here. And I think that we can do the same no matter who is in power.
Well, Abby,
Yeah.
yeah, well, Abby, let me look. We know that the CIA, and I'm not going to use the term deep state. That's like it's so passe. The national security state the institutions, the NSA, the CIA. What they would have to give the green light, I would think, to Biden to give him or drop the charges. What do you expect that to happen, or do you think that they're so recalcitrant, they're so calcified against such a move on Julian Assange that they're really pulling the strings here?
I think that it's a difficult question because, of course, there is a deep state apparatus, not in the cartoonish, polarizing way that Trump put out there, but there is obviously an unchanging force that's continuous through administrations, and I think it has been controlling forces for a long time. However, pardoning, political prisoners is one of the only things that a president can really do on their own. And so Biden really could, if there was enough pressure, he could really just, with the flip of a wrist, really just free Assange and free Leonard Peltier. And that really depends on how much he's feeling the heat, how much he's feeling the pressure to capitulate to a call to do that from a unified body, right? I know a lot of left-wing activists and a lot of people who are actually on the right who can unify in pushing him to do this. But I think that Biden, he's such a centrist loser who basically is, capitulating to nothing except the moderate wing of the party. We really have to stand up in full force, and we really have to show ourselves in numbers, because these people have clearly showed that they are not afraid of us. And we have to make them afraid, because what they want to do is they don't want us to know the rich history of struggle. They don't want us to know the past. They don't want us to understand how we got to where we are. We're just like fish in a goldfish bowl with historical amnesia. And so we need to understand the AIM movement. We need to understand Assange's sacrifice, what he did to let us know what our government is doing. We can't just take that for granted.
Absolutely. I think it might be a good time before I go to you, Roger, to show what he has done. And I think this is what really gets, besides Vault 7, it goes back to the war logs, and particularly collateral murder. So I think people need to see this over and over. And I always play it, but we're going to play a minute of collateral murder here.
Bushmaster, Crazy Horse, we have individuals going to the scene, looks like possibly picking up bodies and weapons. Let me engage you.
Hey, we need to stop that so we can get down there. We need to shoot. You see my location?
Roger. Break. Crazy Horse 1-8, request permission to engage individual. Picking up the wounded. Yeah, we're trying to get permission to engage. Come on, let us shoot. Bushmaster, Crazy Horse 1-8. We're taking him. Bushmaster, Crazy Horse 1-8.
It's Bushmaster 7, go ahead.
Roger, we have a black SUV or bongo truck picking up the bodies. Request permission to engage.
Bushmaster 7, Roger. This is Bushmaster 7, Roger, engage.
1-8, engage. Clear. Come on. Oh yeah, look at that, right through the windshield.
Wow, that I can't get you. I've seen that 1,000 times, and it still shocks me each time I see it. Roger, your feeling when you see that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, as I've said before, it was when I put the wall on between 2010 and 2013, I used that video in the show every single night. We played it during a song called Run Like Hell in the second half. And it still turns my stomach, because obviously normally when you see it, you can't actually hear the murderous disdain with which those fucking arseholes with the 30 millimeter caliber machine gun are murdering those innocent civilians down there. And that one, isn't that's one of the cameramen who crawled over there. That's one of the Reuters cameramen. That's either Sadid or Amir, the other one was called. I think, who was lying there, like probably bleeding out anyway. A kind man stops in a van who happens to have his kids with him, but he stops in the van because he can see that this guy desperately needs help, and he goes to help him. And these crazy American servicemen are just desperate to kill everybody, kill everything that moves, because they've been brought up in this insane country that actually I will never call it home, but I've lived here for a long time now. And so how does this happen? And how is it that we, the people, can't ever get the man to let Leonard Peltier out of prison, or to give Julian Assange his job back that he's really good at, that we so desperately need? We desperately need to know this shit. But somehow the man has convinced most of the population that it's much better if they don't know anything, and that they will be thrown just enough crumbs to keep them barely alive and in debt, so they've got too much to worry about. When we did the Assange thing on Second Avenue a few weeks ago, you and I were down there with many other, well, I say many other, about 100 maybe tops, good people in this on Second Avenue outside the British consulate and whatever. As I arrived, I saw thousands and thousands upon thousands of people, all on their iPhones, all thinking about what are they thinking about? They're thinking about how much they owe on their credit card, or what, or Kim Kardashian's bum. I've no idea what they're thinking about, but they're certainly not thinking about any of the things that we ever think about during the day. And where I spend most of my day, every day, scratching my fucking head and going, what is going on? And so do you. I can see it in your faces. We're all completely amazed that any of this can be happening. How do they pull this off? How is the trick work? How did the snake oil salesman and carpetbaggers get this measure of control over the villagers, us? How did they do it? And how do they maintain it? Because it's obviously really, really bad for us. They spend all the money they should be spending on health and education and, other social services, so in order to give the villagers basic human rights like liberty, life, a roof over their head and enough to eat, and an education for their children. They go, fuck all that. Let's spend 60% of our national budget killing brown people in foreign countries so we can steal what they've got. And they managed to persuade the electorate that that's okay.
Yeah.
And they managed to persuade them that this is a great country that believes in human rights and freedom and liberty and all men are born equal and blah, 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 when it patently is not true. And Julian explains to us in very graphic terms by sharing cables about creating Hamas and about the collateral murder heroically given to him by Chelsea Manning, among others, and we ignore it. We go, not really interested. What?
Right.
Well, this is why they make certain there's no education system. Certainly not in the United States of America. Your education ranks like 48th, right alongside somewhere that's near Zaire. I've no idea, but you desperate to keep the whole population completely pig ignorant. Right. Not that I want to start issue with pigs. I like pigs.
Well,
all right, well, go ahead.
All right, I'm going to stop.
It's not
go ahead. You take that.
It's not surprising that at the heart of empire is just this deeply rotted, dysfunctional society. When you have militarism as this dominant feature of American culture that's displayed in every single facet of our conditioning, from sports to entertainment to politics, it is the story of American exceptionalism sold to us from cradle to grave, because you need to convince people that you are supreme, this supremacist mindset, similarly to Israel, right? Both settler colonial states, both places that externalize their violence into the people that they're brutalizing. But this is a supremacist mindset that Americans largely have because they need to make us think that we're better than everyone else. And that's the only way that this propaganda sticks. That's the only way that this violence can be perpetrated in our names on a daily basis because we believe it. We think that we're so great, that we're better than everyone else in the fucking world. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting. This notion of rugged individualism, the lack of basic human empathy. Basic human empathy. Who cares where a nation starts and stops? What about the tens of millions of people who were being subjugated under our policies every single day, underneath our bombs that are being dropped every single day? It's sick, but it actually makes sense because you have half the country living paycheck to paycheck. How could they possibly even look up and look at the reality of the world? They're focused on their family, right? But the other half of the people, the propaganda works to such an extreme degree that this rugged individualism is part and parcel with American society. We don't want healthcare. We don't want handouts. Anything that could be associated with the government helping us is seen as a negative thing because we're so goddamn brainwashed with this anti-communism. And again, we have no historical reference. We have no understanding of the legacy and nature of what our government is. We don't even understand that we're living in an empire. We don't understand that the United States map is actually not the real United States. There's a territorial empire that expands every which way. There's 800 to 1,000 military bases around the globe. What happens at every single one of those bases? The entire population is subjugated and treated like a dumping zone. And what Julian Assange has done, I mean, even just this new documentary that I've been working on, the amount of references to WikiLeaks cables. I have a couple of these things written down. I mean, just for example, what Julian's cables exposed about Shell oil in Nigeria. How would we know this without WikiLeaks? We wouldn't. Shell controls the entire Nigerian government. They bragged to US officials that they have representatives from Shell oil in every single cabinet in Nigeria's government. This is one of the poorest regions of the world, completely dominated by a US oil corporation. And they're used as a complete puppet force, and they brag to US officials. That's how callous and cynical these disgusting people are. They think it's funny. They think it's something to brag about. I mean, it is sick. I mean, just the fact that the US, according to other WikiLeaks diplomatic cables, that the US cajoles, bribes other nations to try to go under their rule of thumb whenever these climate negotiations happen every year. They actually sent phishing scams to Chinese state officials to try to read all of their emails to bribe these people. This is really sinister, dark stuff. And God knows what we don't know. I mean, this is only what Julian Assange has risked his life. He's sitting there rotting in prison, sick, dying essentially, near suicide. And, you know, we just live our lives, Roger and Randy. And I want to scream from the rooftops. I want to just tell everyone that I know, how are you okay with this? The second you find out about what our government is doing,
they glaze over, don't they, Abby? People glaze over. As soon as you go into American exceptionalism, I mean, I have a painting on my wall in the kitchen, and it's a little elephant sitting in a very cramped room. It's a big elephant sitting in a small room. And I'm glad I've got it in the wall in the kitchen because it's the elephant in the room. And I go, there it is. The elephant in the room is American exceptionalism. You think you live in a great country. You live in a disgusting country. You live in the worst country in the world. You are the worst influence on absolutely everything because you bought the plan of the founding fathers. And it wasn't to make that everybody was created equal and I was born free. It was to maintain the ruling class and the status quo. And they've managed to sell the dream lie to all of you all this time. And when you say that to people, they think, oh my God, this lunatic Englishman or American woman or whoever it is. No wonder it's called, you know, thank goodness your program is called The Empire Files, because that is it. And that's why it's so good. It's because it looks squarely at America as empire, and it's an evil empire.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to play right now. You a
The
little bit.
people aren't evil. I believe that the people are not evil. They're just duped. You know, I just the new song I wrote. I sang it for Randy and about 3 people in a little theatre off Broadway.
There was not
downstairs.
3 people.
And it has this line right in the beginning of it. It
And
goes,
you put your head into the screen because we can't see you. There you go.
"Is
right
that
there.
better?"
There you go.
Oh, for fuck's sake! All right, there you are. Right. I've forgotten what I was going to say. It doesn't really matter.
You were talking about that packed Theater 80 St.
A
Mark's. that
song you
right
just sung.
I don't want to listen. The thing is, yeah, I was talking about the song. Yeah, it's
the bar.
you know, you bought into you sold the family farm for snake oil, bought into the carpetbagger's lies. Now you're hanging on that cross with this feeling of loss, watching the Liberty boat sail on by, because you're not free. You're so far from free. You are entirely enslaved by the lies sold to you by the snake oilman and snake oil salesman and carpetbagger like Trump and Biden and Obama and all the rest of them who bought into the same narrative. Okay, it may be that your obsession with your exceptionalism is born out of the appalling feelings of failure that you felt or your ancestors felt when they got on the boat from the potato famine in Ireland, or from fighting some religious battle in Poland, or from Germany, or from Italy, where they were all, you know, I don't know what the problems were, but they came to America because they failed in Europe. They failed to make it. So they came over here and they discovered that they could plunder this continent, and they did well because this is a hugely rich continent. It's huge, it's big, and they still couldn't figure out how to share it with the people who actually lived here. So those immigrants 200 years ago came over here, and then they tried to kill every single living person and thing that lived here. They failed in that endeavor, but only by a hair. They actually almost succeeded. So now they have to live with that enormous crime, the crime of genocide. But they can't. They cannot look in the mirror and go, "We did that." It's exactly like the man can't go, "I sent Leonard Peltier to prison. I was wrong. He was guilty of no crime." Or if he was, you know, it was, I don't know what. Nothing. I can't see any crime that he committed. So, but they can't actually, it's very difficult for people to look at themselves and go, "This is wrong." It's really difficult. It's hard.
Take
I
some moral
really feel, I
background.
feel for them. I wish I could, because they'd be so much happier. Imagine if they lived in a world where they looked after their old people and people less well off than them and their children. Imagine living in a world where you educated your children and that you didn't have to work 400 hours a week in order to scrape together the money to send them to college, because education should be free. You shouldn't have to pay for college. It's a terrible idea. That's one of the great things about socialism and communism, is you don't pay for education. You get it's free. It's a human right.
Look, the fact that we're in a global pandemic with no healthcare. I still, every day I wake up really just, it's hard to wrap your mind around this.
It's very hard. I've on other things I've said, I'm going to say it again now, how kind of weirdly ironic and sad beyond all belief is it that in one of the great new enemies that we're conjuring up for the ruling class to go on ruling us by us obsessing is China, where this pandemic started. You know, it doesn't matter if it was in a lab or a meat market or whatever it was. We can all agree that it started in Wuhan in China. Okay, how many deaths have there been in China? Oh, let's take a wild guess. Maybe what? Couple of million? It's a huge country. No, 5,000. And how many have there been in the United States of America? 900,000. How did that happen? They have a healthcare system, you fucking morons. That's
ahead,
how it
Abby.
happens. They look after their people.
Death and mass suffering is just such a normalized thing here. Like, people have just accepted this. I mean, when this started, I was like, okay, now there's no way that we're going to accept this further degradation of society. We're going to have to rise up. We're going to have to call for the need for healthcare, all this stuff. And then here 2 years later, Biden's doing almost less than Trump. I mean, he threw us a bone with those 4 fucking tests. And now they're just saying, everyone get back to work. I mean, we all know that quote, like, how a society should be looked at how it treats its most vulnerable people. And well, there's no better picture of how dark and dystopian American society is with what they are doing with the vulnerable people in this pandemic, letting them to suffer and die.
It's funny though, isn't it, that the anti-vaxxers, whoever they are, and I'm not sure that I know any. Well, actually, I know 1 or 2, but they figured out this thing of, we demand the freedom to die. You know what? And weirdly enough, the Rush Limbaugh people, or who they were, I don't know if he died, but a number of them who were like crazed anti-vaxxers then died, and on their deathbed they go, I was wrong.
That's like Yul Brynner when he died.
Preachers in Texas going, God will protect us. My congregation must be allowed to worship and free of masks and mandates, and they all go and they all die, and then they go, whoops, wow, we do know the science is really worked out, and if you read it and if you actually do it rather than just going on the net and believing anything that any crazy, just look at the actual facts about vaccination, how it works, what it is.
If you say if the government does anything to curb this pandemic, it's going to be seen as a sign of authoritarianism. Like, literally, I mean, look at how much gun violence, how many mass shootings, and they have just learned like they can't touch the Second Amendment because we worship guns. And so it's really like this notion of freedom has come to define this weird warped ideal of what American society should be, that Americans are just like, you literally cannot impose anything. Otherwise,
so keep the Wild West, really.
Masks were tyranny. They said masks were tyranny. This is a public health measure that's been around since the fucking Spanish flu.
Right.
Tried
Which is the American flu, by the way. They call it the Spanish flu.
So we want to live.
Yeah.
We want to live in High Noon and Shane, really.
Yeah.
We want to live in the Wild West, where the gun is everything, and and so the sharpshooter is a hero, actually, because Shane, however nice he might have been, he's this weird bloke who came in, let's not go into the movie. Shane,
what I want to do here, listen, I want to get back to Julian Assange here. All right, so you alluded to the Earth's greatest threat. I want to play that trail and get back to you once before you play it. You alluded to diplomatic cables that Julian Assange and WikiLeaks divulged way back, and they are in this. We're going to play this trailer from the Earth's Greatest Threat, and we'll be back. This is by Abby Martin.
There's no longer any debate to be had. Our planet is on a collision course with disaster.
Urgent warning.
Dangerous record-breaking heat.
We're now living in the early stages.
Terrifying signs of things to come.
Mass displacement, deaths, and extinctions are already here. Whether the planet can remain habitable for human beings has become a haunting question.
Climate change protests happening right now.
Part of a global call for action.
We know there are many culprits. Corporations, policymakers, mass consumption. But what if there was one single entity that by itself will bring planetary collapse? One single organization, one single enemy, that not only produced enough toxic destruction to destroy the planet on its own, but was also subject to virtually no regulations, no oversight, no accountability, and as of yet, no blame. If there was a monster like that, shouldn't it be dragged out of the dark and into the center of the struggle to save the planet?
That is unbelievable, Abby. Talk about that film, Abby, and where
See, I hadn't seen that, and but I drew that after about 15 seconds. I drew that on a piece of paper because it was
Dead on.
That's fucking brilliant, Abby. That is
Thank you.
so brilliant. I like. Is that the trailer?
Yes.
It's great.
Thank you.
Tell us about that
And
film, where it is.
it's so great because at the beginning of the trailer, even I did, and then suddenly I went, oh well, obviously the Pentagon. Obviously, it's the, it's the 900 or 800 billion dollars that you spend destroying the planet. Obviously, you can. That's a lot of money.
Well,
Wow.
Abby, can you talk about that film, Abby,
Yeah.
and where it is?
Yeah, I mean, this is meant to be a major anti-imperialist intervention in the environmental movement because climate change is obviously the most pressing, most existential issue of our time. And there seems to be a huge disconnect with the environmental movement, with official organizations like Greenpeace and the Sierra Club, with the actual issue of the US military being the largest institutional polluter in the world, where no corporation or industry even comes close to the amount of pollution committed by the US war machine on a daily basis. It makes sense when you look infrastructurally at the 1,000 military bases around the world with logistics and vehicles and gas. But it also is the munitions testing in places like Guam and Puerto Rico. It's the war games, simulations of the invasion of China, blowing up huge ordinances in the middle of the ocean, the supply chain, the arms manufacturers, the production and distribution of weapons around the world, the Superfund sites, 900 Superfund sites just in the US. These are highly polluted, toxic sites that have not been fully cleaned up, that are basically just poison for the surrounding environment and community. Those all host military installations. These bases are extremely destructive to humanity and the environment. They're used as dumping grounds. And so this film is basically meant to expose all of these, link all of these together. And of course, the main issue that trailer was about is the issue of US military emissions. The US military lobbied the Kyoto Treaty in 1997 to remove any sort of standard for militarism and to completely omit any sort of military emissions from these negotiations. So for the last 20 plus years, we've been blowing smoke up our asses about climate negotiations. Meanwhile, the US military and all junior partners of the empire have been completely omitted from the conversation. And they have not given us any transparency about how much they are actually putting out there. So they've hidden all this data because they don't want us to know the enormous cost of empire to the environment. And we're going to do just that with this film.
Yeah, you know what? I don't plan to see anything like that. Expect to see anything like that on MSNBC. So now are you getting pushback already with this film?
Yeah, where's it coming out? When's it coming out? I want to go and see it.
Yeah, so we're working on it right now. We went to Glasgow for COP26. It was actually hilarious, you guys. I actually confronted Nancy Pelosi about this issue, and she was just a total robot. I mean, I was there.
Of course, she is a total robot.
I was there trying to confront these US officials about why is the US military exempt from climate treaties? What are we talking about here? This is the elephant in the room. And I was able to really stage that intervention and really confront these people. And they were just running away scared. It's a total farce. But yeah, so we went to Glasgow, Scotland. We've been to Alaska to film. We're hopefully going to raise more funds to finish the second leg of filming, and then we're going to get to the editing bay and put this together. But right now we're hoping to have a different distribution model for this film than Gaza Fights for Freedom, because that film, of course, was completely censored. No one paid attention to it. We ended up just putting it up for free online. But this film, the whole point is to not preach to the choir. We need to get this information out there. And so we're really, we're really going hard with this. We're pulling every expense out to really make this as high profile and as, expensive as a production as we can, because we want it to be top tier and get it seen by as many people as possible.
How do people, who want to contribute, how do they, toss in a few dollars?
Yeah. So for anyone listening who's interested, we're a nonprofit, so all of your donations are tax deductible, but you can go to earthsgreatestenemy.com and check it out. And we're in need right now of just people's ideas, input, donations. And if you know anyone who's interested in the environment, just get the word out, because this is really the most pressing issue of our time. In this movie, we want to really change the conversation, and we really want a mass awakening of the true culprit, because we cannot possibly address any of these environmental issues unless we get to the actual root cause, which is U.S. imperialism and empire.
Yeah,
And capitalism.
And capitalism.
And the whole model of the ruling class who make all the decisions, even if there's only 4 of them. Take your pick. Zuckerberg, what's his face from Amazon, blah, 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 blah.
Bezos.
Yeah, Jeff Bezos, blah, 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 the Microsoft bloke, and maybe 10 others and whatever. And they decide absolutely everything because they're so wealthy that they sort of can. And they never pay any taxes, or, everything's in offshore funds, trillions and trillions of dollars that could be used to educate our children or feed our hungry or help in some way. But none of it gets used for that because they're busy building their own power base. I was thinking of something, though, about what you said about the choir. I hear what you say exactly, but Abby, there is a but, and that is, I have this feeling that you really are, you're preaching to the people who are just beyond the edge of the choir. They're not singing yet, but they might be welcomed into the choir. And sometimes when I say this, because we need a really big choir to make a really big noise and to sing in beautiful harmony, and the voices in the choir, in my stupid old bass player's heart, I believe that somehow the swelling of this magnificent noise that loving people make when they shout and sing as loud as they can will somehow encourage others, until there are so many of us that the man cannot say, no, Peltier and Assange stay in prison. We have decided. We don't care what you think. We don't care about the law or right and wrong or justice or hunger or poverty or liberty or any of that shit. Fuck them. So I think you were saying the same thing. We need to get the choir back. Though, as we know, even if the choir is enormous, as it was on February the 14th, 2003, when at least 20 and probably 30 million people took to the streets in the world, they invaded Iraq anyway, even though we ordinary people in the choir knew it was bullshit. We knew it was illegal. We knew it would only lead to death and misery. We knew it had nothing to do with 9/11. We knew it had nothing to do with anti-terrorism or anything. We knew it was complete bullshit. And yet they did it anyway. Yeah. Millions of people in the streets of London and Madrid and New York. Well, I'm not sure really what happened over here. Sorry, I'll shut up again.
I just a quote from Michael Preisner here, because he was in Iraq. He says, "We are told we are fighting terrorists. The real terrorist was me," is what he says. And the real terrorism is this occupation. I guess you've heard that quote before, Abby.
Yeah, and bringing it back to Assange, Assange's leaks were actually instrumental in ending the Iraq War, and I want to quickly explain why. Because a lot of people think that Obama kind of came in and swept up and ended the Iraq War to focus on the good war, although another criminal, unnecessary invasion, occupation of a country. But when he was in, he sent to try to negotiate the status of forces agreement. And at that time, there was a cable that had just been released that showed that what the U.S. was claiming was a drone strike that accidentally killed a bunch of civilians was actually a raid that came in. This was released in 2011. That provided evidence that U.S. troops executed 10 Iraqi civilians, including a woman in her 70s and 5-month-old infant. Then they called in an airstrike to destroy the evidence. That's how sick these people are. That's how sick and egregious the war crimes go. I mean, it's just so many war crimes. And so this was just the nail in the coffin for these people. They just said, look, unless we can try these soldiers under Iraqi law and in Iraqi courts, we are not interested in extending the status of forces agreements, Gates. And so they actually, this was just the final straw. I mean, they pulled out, and not enough people give WikiLeaks credit for the Iraq war logs, all of the accumulation of casualties that we know happen. I mean, after those Blackwater guards unleashed that horrific massacre and killed like almost 20 just innocent Iraqi civilians, there was a huge assault on Fallujah in 2004 where they just ran rampant. They killed almost 1,000 Iraqis as a retaliation for something that was actually justified because these criminal occupying private security contractors unleashed a massacre. So, you know, there's only so many heinous war crimes that these people can take. And so they forced the U.S. out. There was an armed insurgency of 100,000 fighters that were ready to say, we're going to fight you unless you leave. And that was all mounted because of WikiLeaks cables.
Wow, that's amazing. Look, we have I'm going to go to a break here. Don't go anywhere. I got to say goodbye to some of our listeners here in New York, and come right back. You guys okay? Coming right back and continue this discussion. All right. We all know Nils Melzer. I heard you talking about Nils Melzer the other day in an interview you did, Abby, and Roger and I interviewed him again just 2 weeks ago. And his book is coming out on February 11th, and it's called The Trial of Julian Assange, A Story of Persecution. That's coming out. Please, it's at Verso. Get that book. And we're going to, you know, he also plays the piano and he writes music. And we're going to take a break. This is a little Nils Melzer, and we'll continue on the other side. Okay, that was Nils Melzer. I'm Randy Credico, Randy Credico Live on the Fly with a special edition of Assange Countdown to Freedom with really crack investigative journalist Abby Martin and rock superstar and activist. You're an activist too, Abby. You're an activist. I mean, you're a journalist that's an activist, and Roger, you're an entertainer that's an activist. I consider myself an activist as well. Do you think that, Abby, being an activist as a journalism, are you crossing a line? Do you ever feel, or people accuse you of that?
No, because all these journalists are peddled with the notion of neutrality and J school, and they think that they need to show both sides of the story. I'm sorry, I don't need to show the police side of the story if a homeless person's executed in the streets of downtown Los Angeles. I don't need to say the U.S. military general's side of the story after a massacre is committed in Afghanistan where countless civilians are killed. So I, as a journalist, I'm an advocacy journalist. I wear my bias and heart on my sleeve. I don't couch my opinion in expert opinions of think tank officials that work for defense contractors in the Brookings Institute or Atlantic Council. No, I speak on behalf of the people, the most suppressed voices in the world. I try to be a conduit for their stories. I'm simply a vehicle for those people who are completely omitted and censored from the corporate media. And that is what I do. And that is my passion. And my passion is for justice and accountability in this world. And, you know, I lived in DC for several years. I know how it works. Journalism these days is about access and climbing the corporate ladder, and it's about power. And there's third rail issues that they just don't touch. And a lot of these journalists are indoctrinated to believe in American exceptionalism. They believe in empire. They actually believe in American supremacy. So how could you possibly think that you're going to get the truth from them? They either are self-censoring or they are outright true believers in the system. And I'm sorry, but that's not where I go for my news, is not news created by and for the elites.
Go to the Empire Files. Well, you know, of course, I concur with what you just said. And as far as these other news, you call them news outlets, MSNBC, there's no news there. It's like I used to say about the McLaughlin Group. You get 5 points of view: the right, the far right, the extreme right, the fascist right, and the third right. That's all you get. There's no real discussion. And the same thing with CNN. Barbara Starr may as well get her paycheck from the Department of Defense. And so should Ken Delanian, who looks like alfalfa, but not as smart, from the Little Rascals. So, Roger, can you pick up on what Abby just said?
Well, yeah, obviously that's why we adore her, because she is that. She does have not just a point of view, but she expresses it extremely eloquently. And she, along with a fairly small, sadly, band of brothers out there in not mainstream media land, are telling the truth, and they're doing it extremely eloquently. And I was just, the other day, I was brought back to, what the hell? Oh, Amnesty coming out and finally deciding that that Israel is an apartheid state and blah, 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 reminded me that a couple of days ago, I've written my memoir, and I came across a recording of a conversation between me and 2 people from Amnesty International. One's called Matt something or other, and somebody I could look the names up if you wanted. No. Anyway, it's a phone call that I had with them that I recorded, and it's about 40 minutes long. And it's a phone conversation that I had because this following thing happened. Should I be attacking out? Yeah, fuck them. So way back in the day, I was about to do a webinar with my friend Stephen Donziger and Paul E. Pazzi Nunez, who is the head of Amazon Watch, and blah, 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 about the whole Chevron Amazon indigenous people polluting the rainforest, Donziger being sent to prison for contempt of, all that whole story and whatever. And Paul said to me, oh, Amazon International are going to tweet an announcement that the webinar is going to happen, right? Tomorrow. Oh, whoopee, great. Yeah, it's great. Big organization. Blah, blah. Would you retweet it? So I went, yeah, okay, give me the. So I did. And it was an announcement of the thing. 24 hours later, I went to read the tweet and it wasn't there. It had gone. What had happened is that some fucking arsehole in London, he's called Christian Benedict is his name, who works for Amnesty International or whatever, had a contrary view to mine about whether or not there had been a chemical attack in Duma in April of 2018, on April the 7th, 2018, because I'd stood up on stage on April the 13th in Barcelona and said, I think our governments should really be careful about this and check into the facts of whether there was a chemical attack, and if there was, whether the Assad government was responsible, before they go dropping bombs on Syria. Of course, they took no notice and went off and dropped bombs on Syria. And they were wrong, as we know, because of all the work that Aaron Mate, particularly from the Grey Zone, has done on the work. And they've had hearings in the Security Council of the United Nations all about it. It's public. And still people won't accept that it was a false flag operation and that it didn't happen. And the white helmets were involved in making dubious videos about blah, blah. So Amnesty International decided that they would remove their tweet because I was on the panel for the webinar and I was not an appropriate person to speak about human rights because I disagreed with Christian fucking Benedict and Elliot Higgins from Bellingcat and the rest of those CUNTSs about that particular incident in Duma on that. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
And I came across it again the other day. I actually sent it to my publisher and said, look, here's another chapter for my book, because this is beyond belief that people are this closed-minded about things. The fact that I was right, of course, is completely irrelevant to them, and they will all go to their graves believing that Assad dropped, well, they said it was sarin, but after that, chlorine, and it's now since been shown beyond any reasonable doubt, because the inspectors from the OPCW who were involved have come out and said so, the people who were actually there. It didn't happen.
How gross is it to sideline something that's so important for human rights? This advocacy for a
Exactly,
lawyer
and to throw me under the bus and say
bullshit beef that this guy had with you. It's ludicrous, and it really shows you just how warped the priorities are.
And also the spokespersons for Amnesty International. Well, I'll send you the interview if you want. It's fascinating. We're totally mealy-mouthed about it.
Of course. Well, they've been mealy-mouthed about apartheid for the last frickin' 30 years. I mean, I'm happy. This is very important.
So am I.
And it's, you know why it's important? Because so many tens of millions of liberals love Amnesty. They're influenced by Amnesty's line. And this is a very crucial step to finally acknowledge the reality that we've all known since the formation of Israel. And so this is very good for them to follow suit of Human Rights Watch and B'Tselem, which is an Israeli organization that's been saying it's apartheid. So welcome on board, Amnesty.
B'Tselem, we're talking about. B'Tselem have. Yeah, B'Tselem. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well,
don't you get us started, Randy. You know what a trouble fucking making you.
I'm going to listen. I'm tired of hearing myself. Go ahead, Abby. He's talking about
how's Fox? How's Foxy? Isn't he call you a fox, your baby?
He's great.
Is that a secret? Sorry. All right.
He's 20 months old. He's starting to talk, and he's a little rascal. I hear him upstairs running around.
Well, how could he not be with these mum and dad?
That must be fun. Abby, so he's talking about Amnesty. These other groups, Amnesty came out for Julian Assange recently, and so has the, you saw Nils Melzer, Human Rights Watch, Reporters Without Borders, and a number of other mainstream media, or not media, human rights organizations. How come it hasn't had any impact in the case of Julian Assange?
When the US media decides that they want to demonize someone, it's a full throttled attack. And I'd say half the people on the street, first of all, a lot of people wouldn't know who Julian Assange is or the sacrifices he's made to give us truth. But those who do just blindly believe the corporate media I mean, the demonization campaign has worked so well, and it's gone in several different iterations. That first it was these outrageous allegations of sexual assault, and then it just became where he revealed, private identity. I mean, all the classified information, all of it is completely bunk. And it's really sad because people have no idea what the real story is. And if, it blows my mind that people can actually be in the field of journalism and go against Julian Assange. You know why? Because they know that their jobs are never threatened. They know that they're never going to actually do real reporting. So why would they feel at risk for what Julian Assange is going to? But how dare they look themselves in the mirror and call themselves journalists? How dare they? How dare they? If they don't understand the fundamental freedom that is being threatened by this case, it goes far beyond anything that we've seen in the history of this country. We're on the steps of totalitarianism. I mean, this is basically going after publishers. Anyone can be at risk now. Anyone who publishes a document about real things. None of these documents were forged. None of them were fake. His real crime, let's face it, his real crime, embarrassing the US empire and also embarrassing Hillary Clinton. I mean, who knows how deep those tentacles go? They had to blame someone for the rise of Trump. And it wasn't only Putin, it was Assange.
Well, maybe didn't Julian give the Hillary campaign a campaign map that left out Michigan and Wisconsin? It was his fault, right?
Yeah, right.
I want to, that interview you did with me a few years back, how damaging was it to the image of Julian Assange, the Roger Stone's lies about being associated with him? What kind of influence was it orchestrated? they put him out there. There was nothing there. Can you imagine Julian Assange saying, "I got all this great stuff. Let me give it to Roger Stone"? All right,
Well,
so
that's the thing. It's like everyone's like, "Oh, well, who gave him the documents?" Like, I don't give a shit who gave him the documents. Are they real or not? If you wouldn't have published those documents, then what the hell are you doing? The documents were explosive and extremely incriminating and exposed the machinations of how vicious and corrupt the DNC establishment was. Like, of course the documents were relevant. Of course they should have been published. And I don't care where they were coming from. So that's a whole red herring. And then the other, of course, straw man is, oh, yeah, well, he was communicating with Donald Trump Jr. and blah, 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 blah. Look, Hillary Clinton said that she wanted to drone strike Julian Assange. So at that point, look, I don't blame the guy. Look, he thought that he had a chance maybe with a pardon for Trump. I don't know where his head was at, but I don't think that it's up to us to judge him on that, because basically the other option was calling to kill him. So, you know, there's a lot floating around, but really all that matters is the fact that nothing Julian Assange released was proven false. It was all relevant, and it exposed the most horrific atrocities that are committed by this government that they have tried to cover up. And the list is just extremely long. We can go on for the next 5 hours to talk about what he's revealed, but we need WikiLeaks. We need WikiLeaks. And this is really about making sure there's a precedent set in stone that no other iteration of a WikiLeaks can exist, because they want to set an example of Julian. They want to throw him to the dogs and say, this is what you will get if you try to do anything similarly to what Julian Assange has done. And that is what should terrify us all.
Also, we need to know absolutely if the DNC is criminally corrupt, including Hillary fucking Clinton. We need to know that. It's just as important as knowing that Richard Nixon organized the break-in at the Watergate Center back in the day. It's exactly the same form of corruption. And it needs to be rooted out of any democratic political system without fear or favor. Never mind for the result of an election. If you don't want an act like that to affect your chances of winning an election, don't do it.
Right. And I don't believe that he wouldn't have published. If someone gave him a trove of documents on the Trump administration, of course he would have published it. That's what he did. Yeah. That's what he did every day. So
that's his
this
job.
This is all
that as his job. Exactly.
Right.
And hopefully he will still see that as his job when he gets out and goes back to doing his job. And we, the public, have to absolutely demand that he is allowed to do it, because he's the only one. And without him, it becomes increasingly difficult. All this bullshit in the last couple of days, by the way, about RTDE being taken off the air is a story that I'm following very closely. That's where I get most of my news from. If I want to know about anything international, you have to go to RT. You cannot find it on American mainstream TV. So you're either scouting around in here or there, but quite often I just go to RT and look at the news to see what's happening.
I like watching Afshin Rattansi, by the way, says, I love Abby Martin. He sent me a text earlier today.
Afshin is
going underground. Good program. He's a good man, Afshin.
He's a good man. There's a lot of good people out there, and we have to unite to bring home Julian Assange to be with his baby boys, his fiance, and be the spokesperson that we all need to be the lens into how corrupt and dark this empire really is.
Cut. Sorry. That felt great.
Listen, Roger, you're going to continue, I guess, speaking out. You're going on tour. Did you know that Roger's going on tour?
Yeah, I did.
Soon. It's called.
Oh, I hope I can come. Are you have an LA leg? I'm assuming. I would love to come.
Of course.
Well,
yay.
I'm not sure when it is, but
we have a trailer, I guess, or a promo of Roger's tour coming up that we're going to show you, and this looks very exciting.
Back in 1972, I woke up one morning and had this big realization. This is it. Here I was thinking I was preparing for something, but I'm not. I just missed the starting gun. My life is happening now. suddenly thought, fuck me, what if we all missed the starting gun? What if the race is over? This is not a drill.
What do you think, Abby?
It's powerful as hell. I'm there, baby. Let's do it. Let's do it. I mean, the one and only
That
time
was
I saw
no one.
Roger was in Mexico City, and it was the most mind-blowing, full immersive experience I've ever been to. It was incredible. If you have not seen Roger Waters perform in person, go. If it's the last thing you ever do.
Now, Roger, it starts in July, and in August you'll be at Madison Square Garden.
Yes, I will.
Are you excited about this?
I am, as it happens. I very nearly cancelled it about 2 or 3 weeks ago because of the Omicron thing and the blah, blah, blah. And then I thought, oh my God, I'm not going to miss the starting gun again, because it would be very easy to go, oh, Omicron, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, fuck it, I'm going to get out there and do it, because, I'm not, weirdly enough, I'm not getting any younger. Don't believe what they tell you in those adverts you read about those pills, Randy. They don't work.
I guess I got a bad batch then.
Anyway, yeah, I am excited. I'm really excited. It's really good. And having now decided, yeah, we're out, we're going there, it's even more exciting.
Right.
I've realized how much I actually missed that deadline day, because you can work on something and work on it and work on it. But if you don't have a deadline, it's different than when you do have a deadline and you go, curtain up. That day, Pittsburgh, July the 6th, 8 o'clock, boom,
Right.
there we will be.
Wow.
And it will be great.
Yes. I hope you're in LA. Abby.
I hope I'm in Pittsburgh, because it's in Pittsburgh.
I know after that, because
I
plan to be out in LA during the summer, and that's where I grew up, in a little city called.
Yeah, well, I don't have it in front of me, but go to rogerwaters.com. All the dates are there.
Awesome.
Abby,
Andy, let's go together.
Yeah, let's go. I hope it's in LA. I'll come out there. I'll come on Highway 10 all the way to Santa Monica or somewhere by there, Alvarado.
It's probably the Staples Center. That's in recent years. That's where I've performed.
Let's do it.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Great. Look,
Abby, Abby, Roger wants to get back on stage. You've been, taking a hiatus. Are you itchy to get back into the Empire Files? Are you going to maintain all of your energy on this film that has to come out, by the way? The Earth's greatest threat.
Yeah.
Earth's greatest enemy, but it is also.
I have threat there. I don't know if
okay.
I got threat.
So yeah, so I have taken a hiatus for a couple months to film, but we're still doing regular podcasts. We're still putting out a bunch of video material. Mike flew to Hawaii as soon as he heard about the Red Hill disaster, the U.S. Navy dumping millions of tons of fuel into these pristine aquifers and hurting the indigenous Hawaiian community there. So he was on the ground producing original reporting for Empire Files just 1 month ago. So we're still right there reacting to all of the foreign policy stuff that's going on, all of the U.S. empire pollution. We're going to be there documenting it along the way, doing, more on the ground reports for our donors and stuff like that. But as far as the daily grind, producing, tons of video reports, we're taking a step back to focus on the film, and we're excited about getting this message out there.
And so give that website out one more time.
Yeah. Earth's Greatest
Enemy.
Earth'sGreatestEnemy.com. And you can also watch Gaza Fights for Freedom on Films for Action and YouTube for free.
That was not easy to find, by the way.
Is that trailer out there? Can I forward it on my website?
Oh, please. That would be brilliant. Roger, I'll send it to you.
I'll send it to you immediately, or she'll send it to you. You know how to read. We'll both send it to you. All right.
I would put it out on the Pink Floyd website, but Fatty Gilmore won't let me. What's that funny, Abby?
And Abby, will you put his promo out on your?
I'm gonna blast the shit out of that promo so hard. Oh, and Roger, wait, one last thing I wanted to tell you. So, Georgia, I had the BDS lawsuit against Georgia, and I won.
Yeah, I know.
A judge had ruled it unconstitutional, but here's the problem: is that they just changed the law to up the cap to 100,000. So now we need a plaintiff And I don't know how it works. This might be something you might know, someone who can get a contract from the state that's that much money, but that's basically where we're at. Is they're now changing these laws to
Right.
keep unconstitutional laws on the books, but making it so that people receiving just $1,000 are not subject to the BDS laws anymore. So we got to find someone like a Ben and Jerry's or someone
Well,
like a
what's
Roger
wrong with
Waters.
me? I'm sure I'm
Take
doing
these
a gig
people
there.
on.
I must be doing a gig. Atlanta.
That's what I'm
I'm
saying.
doing a fucking gig in Atlanta. Let's do that.
Let's
Let's force them to cancel me.
I'm gonna hit you up.
Let's do it.
Let's do
I'd
it,
love
baby.
to do that. I tried to get New York to do it on the Us and Them tour after Governor, whatever his face was.
Oh,
he's
yeah.
governor- what's his name? The ex-governor of New York. He's gone.
Andrew Cuomo,
Cuomo, yeah. He made a lot of noise, and they were going to cancel my gig in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center, and I went, "Come on, please, I want my day in court." And they went, "Oh, sorry, we made a mistake," and disappeared.
Yeah, they don't want to upset the Roger Waters fans. Now that's how we get an angry mob. Cancel Roger Waters' leg of a tour, and then we'll get the angry mob at the government, the heels of the government. That's how we
good. Well, I promise you I will make a fuss about it in Georgia and say, why aren't you canceling me?
Yeah.
You cannot find a more solid supporter of BDS than me.
Exactly.
Yes, you two are really great on the issue. Just amazing. And,
thanks, Abby.
And look for the tour. Maybe you'll add Atlanta to the tour, and look for Earth's Greatest Enemy. And we're going to put.
Oh, you're saying it's not? Am I not playing anywhere in Georgia? I can't believe that.
I don't know. I don't have any notes here, and if I did, I couldn't read them. I couldn't even read.
You call yourself a host,
Randy.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't know your fucking tour, man. That's the first time I use the F word. Nobody else has. All right, look, if there's any thing else you two want to talk about, or if not, I'd like to get some concluding remarks. First from you, Abby, on this whole Julian Assange persecution. Where do we go from here? How dangerous it is. Anything you want to say, and then we'll flip it to Roger.
I mean, it's just sad. You know, sometimes I look around and, you know, I have my kid here and I'm living with my partner and I'm able to do my journalism. And I just think about Assange. I mean, I just think about how sad it is that he's just day in and day out in this cell, rotting away and largely forgotten about. And I look around and just think of the complacency and the normalization of something like this. And to herald our country as some sort of beacon of human rights and press freedom and democracy, and all of these movies coming out being like, oh, free press, movies about the Washington Post and blah, 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 blah. It's like, give me a goddamn break. Look at your own backyard. Why don't you clean up your own mess first? And it's disgusting, and it sickens me, and it breaks my heart. Above all, it breaks my heart. And we just can't forget about him. We cannot forget about Assange, what he's done, what he's going through. That's on our hands. That's on all of our hands. And we have to do everything in our power. Every fiber of our being needs to be dedicated for accountability and justice. And that includes the freedom of Assange. We can't let this go. We have to do everything we can until that man is freed.
Roger? You're all set.
Well, two things. I have two things to say at this point. One is, and the first one is, I'm going to look at the camera now, because this isn't actually about Assange. It's about you, and it's about me. It's about all of us. The attack on Assange is an attack on all of our freedom, and it could be a lethal attack, literally a lethal attack, because if they can get rid of Assange, they can get rid of everyone who ever tells the truth about anything. All right, just like that. Abby's one, I'm one, Randy's one. There are millions of you out there who are, this is about you, so it's not just about Julian, but yeah. And the other thing is, I've just had a quick look at the other screen over there. I am playing in, stop it. Sorry.
That's me calling you to get
called me.
Your
hey,
date.
All right, hang on. I just had a look at the other screen over there. I am playing a gig in Atlanta, Georgia on the 20th of August. So I hereby publicly challenge the state of Georgia to cancel the gig, because I admit I am a big supporter of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement that hopes eventually to bring freedom and basic human rights to the people of Palestine. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. And I will be doing this and hoping to fight the same battle that my friend Abby Martin did, which she won in the courts in Georgia, but they've now decided to put it to one side because she wasn't being paid enough. She was only getting $1,000 to speak at whatever the occasion was. She was, well, I promise you I'll be getting more than $1,000. I gather that you've put the bar at 100 grand. I promise you I will be paying more than $100,000. It would cost me that just to pay the people who clean the hall up after we do the show. All right. So let's go for it. Come on, guys. Let's have our day in court in Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you very much. That's not my final word. Stella, Julian, the kids, the whole team, everybody, we are with you, and we will go on being with you until this fight is over and Julian Assange is free. And now I have finished.
Wow. Well, I'm not going to follow that. I want to thank you, Abby. You can get on Twitter at Abby Martin, and Roger at Roger Waters, and me at Critical Randy. But forget about me. But we're going to send both of you. You, Abby, first. I'm going to send you the promo, and then Roger, I'm going to send it. But you have each other's email addresses now. I know that. All right. So if one doesn't do it to the other, I will send. I'm going to do it anyway. All right. So this has been Randy Critical live on the fly with a very special Assange Countdown to Freedom with two very special guests. Our special guest, Abby Martin, and our special co-host, Roger Waters. August 20th, Abby will be there in Atlanta, right?
Oh, I'm going to be there with bells on, baby. Let's do it.
All right.
Let's do the damn thing. Free Palestine. Randy, you are the best. Get your ass to LA immediately. Let's hang out.
I'm going to be there soon. By the way, I got my 50-year reunion in high school out there.
Oh my God.
Can you believe that's old?
I'll be your date.
All right. So yes, please. It's in Pomona, of all places. Went to Pomona High. We're going to go out here. This is Roger Waters. I want you guys, if you want to cut out, please don't. This is Roger Waters in London in 2020 at a pro-Assange rally, and him singing one of my favorite tunes of all time, I Wish You Were Here. This is Roger at a rally in London in 2020, and I say goodbye to all you out there, and thank you for listening and watching.
Say goodnight, Gracie.
Assange. Say goodnight, Gracie.
So you think you can tell heaven from hell, blue skies from pain? Can you tell it from a cold steel red, a smile from veil? Do you think you can tell? And if they get you to trade your heroes for ghosts, hot ashes for trees, and hot air for cool breeze, cold comfort for change, and that you exchange